not done much, but I think you feel that it's important to share with all the fans out there, Adam Amin, of what this man meant to you, to Bulls basketball, and to your career.
Yeah, I appreciate the time and being able to come in and talk to friends about it. I had to bury myself in a hole yesterday, which I'm sure anybody who's ever dealt with any type of loss in their life, that's a very understandable and reasonable human response. And I didn't answer your texts until earlier today. And again, I apologize if I left anybody hanging. It was just I decided after the news became public that I didn't want to deal with it. I'd found out a couple hours before the Bulls had called me and let me know that it had taken place. And I told you guys when I walked in, I'm still just drifting a little bit mentally. I'm sure I'm not the only person who feels that way. Just kind of drifting around. But today was a little easier. I wrote a piece for The Athletic that'll come out at some point, and that made it a little bit easier. That's a good processing tool and mechanism, to write out what you feel and organize it and think about it in a pretty deep way. And then I just came over from CHSN. We were doing a kind of a tribute show, and Casey Johnson and Ruthie Polinsky were doing a very nice job of kind of handling that, so we didn't have to. And Mark Brady and I, our producer for the Bulls, both went in and just kind of talked. And that's honestly, this is a very selfish move for me. I'm doing this as a therapeutic mechanism, honestly, because it's just hard to sit around and wallow in it for as long as I have. But this is just helpful. It's nice to be able to hear you guys and hear the calls and see the footage, and to hear people call in the way they have to you guys all show, and I'm sure before you guys too. Wow, what a treat to hear how people felt about him. And I think it sucks to be sad, but the worst thing is to be sad and alone, and I do not feel alone. I don't think any of us feel alone in our sadness right now, because a whole city is behind this guy, and a whole city loved this guy, and that's not an easy thing to do, especially for a non-native. There's a kid from Oklahoma who landed here and turned it into his home, and this place adopted him as a son, and a favored one at that. And it's been quite lovely in a lot of ways, bittersweet certainly, but quite lovely to listen to people's fond appreciation and memories for him. It's going to take a long time for me to process a lot of this stuff, because there's so much there. You guys just played like a smattering of calls. That's a small sample of just funny moments, and that doesn't even scratch the surface of how much I had the best seat in the house. For anybody who's a fan of Stacey's, I had the best seat in the house, because I was next to him every night, or most nights, and I was sitting next to him on the plane, and I was next to him on the bus, and just there was a lot of time spent together. He would come to my DJ sets. He was a supportive friend and a great brother and uncle and teammate and all of it. So, like I said, this is a very selfish thing for me to just be able to talk about it, so that I don't wallow in it, because it's nice to be able to hear what other people have to say too.
And because it is super meaningful to you too, and to talk about him. When you put pen to paper, when you start thinking about, what is the biggest thing you want to tell people who only knew him through the television?
Yeah.
And I think the ability of Stacey, what was best is you felt you knew him,
yeah,
even if you didn't. But what message would you like to convey about Stacey, or the most important thing that comes to your brain when you first start thinking about him?
I think there's a professional aspect and a personal aspect to it. And the personal aspect is it was infectious joy with which he operated. And I don't ever want to lose that. I think I do this job with a certain level of enthusiasm and excitement and joy. And that, while that's not completely generated by another person, that has to come from within you, I think it was very easy to get caught in the gravitational force of Stacey sitting next to him. And that doesn't just mean for, to do the job. I think that's in any moment. This is one of the things I wrote about. There are very few people, I think, that we encounter in our lives. I imagine that we can only count them on one or two hands at most if we live a full life, that have this innate and specific gift where they make you, it's kind of what you were just talking about, Sylvia. I think they make you feel like you're welcomed right where your feet are. Like right where you're at is where you're supposed to be. And if you're next to Stacey, that's where you belong. You should be there. You're part of it. You're in the circle. You're one of us. And, you know, it's hard not to get caught. The guy was 6'11", and you know, he was a large man, physically a large man. So when somebody has that type of personal gravitational pull, it's impossible not to get sucked into it. He had a charm and a charisma that it's very rare. But then to have that, to have his gifts, to have his humor, to have his charm and all the charisma and all that stuff, and still be able to make anybody from any walk of life, from any place, from any country, and there were people from all over the world that would come to see him because they were Bulls fans or they got to know his catchphrases, or you know, there were fans from Japan and Australia with Josh Giddey and Yuki, and you know, like French fans because of some of the French players on the team, and like there are people from all over the globe that would come to visit him, and to, you know, they'd come to a game and they wanted, one of the bucket list things for them coming to Chicago and seeing a Bulls game was, I want to meet the guy that we listen to, because there's a connective tissue there. And there's very few people, I think, that we encounter that have that special gift that has a universal power to it. And the universal power is to make you feel like you're right where you should be, and you don't have to question yourself. You don't have to feel self-conscious about it. Like, you're with us in this moment. That's a very precious and rare gift. And I do think it's a gift that not everybody is bestowed with. He was bestowed with that. And I think personally, that's what I would want people to know. And then professionally, I hope people remember that he was more than the catchphrases, because the catchphrases were just a conduit. They were an easy avenue to be able to learn from him. Hey, I'm going to say this funny thing. You're going to get hooked onto it. I'm going to entertain you. But when you get here, you're going to learn some stuff. And I will teach it to you in a way that is digestible and processable. And the basketball purist will like it, and the casual fan will understand it. And that's a truly impressive ability as a professional broadcaster, when so often these lines are drawn. And this is the basis of what I wrote about, because this is what I think of him as. Like, he blew up whatever formula was out there. The formula is, I'm the play-by-play guy. I say who and what. You're the analyst. You tell me how and why. I hit the big call. The crowd goes nuts. You shut up, and then we're just going to lay out. And that's not how he did games, and that's okay. And I never thought it was a bad thing, because I grew up on it. I grew up watching it like so many of us did. So then when I got the opportunity to work it, I was like, well, I'm going to make sure I don't step on that. I don't want to lose that magic that I remember when I was young and watching, you know, him play, or watching his interviews, or watching him in studio, or then watching him call D Rose games. Like, I don't want to lose that. So I hope people realize that he was really good at this job. He was a one-of-one broadcaster. He is a one-of-one person, and that is an incredibly rare combination.
It's one of the things we've said all day, Adam, is that he was so good at his job. Good. He was so talented. He could educate you. He could entertain you. He could do pretty much all of it. Thought it was interesting before we came on the air. His inspiration for this part of his life came from somewhere I would have never known from. Or known about.
So he was obviously a powerhouse at Oklahoma, so that garners a lot of national media attention, and that meant Dick Vitale's coming to your building and talking to Billy Tubbs. Hey, who are your players? Who are the PT peers? Who are the diaper dandies that I need to know about? And Stacey King was at the forefront of that. Stacey and Dick had a really good relationship. Dick loved calling Stacey's games, and when Stacey met Dick Vitale, he said, that's how I want to do it. This guy's having more fun than anybody in the building. When I go back and watch the highlights, or watch the video, the VHS tape that my parents taped, and watch the game back, like, hey, he's talking about me like that? Man, that sounds awesome. I get to talk. Now, I'm going to walk around like I'm a primetime player because Dick Vitale said so. And that carried over. That was the genesis for 35 years of a basketball life, and that is exactly how he did the job. And when he walked into, to Comcast Studios when they first started, in the mid-2000s with Chuck Garfien, who, was one of the people to break the news to a lot of the people in this city, and did a wonderful job doing it, even though it was a very emotional moment. When those two were working together, like Stacey said, this is how I'm going to do the job. When he started filling in for Red, this is how I'm going to do the job. When he took over full time with Neil in '08, this is how I'm going to do the job. And there was nothing but pure authenticity with how he did the job. And there are a lot of copycats out there because he was one of the originators of this specific style that does not work for everybody. Frankly, it doesn't work for most people. He was a unique entity in that regard, and it started with meeting Dick Vitale.
Yeah.
You're listening to WMVP Chicago, WTBC HD2 Chicago. The great Adam Amin in studio with us, the voice of the Bulls. You hear him nationally, and we're talking about the tragic loss of our friend, all of our friends, Stacey King, an iconic voice in Chicago sports history, also a three-time champion and All-American at Oklahoma, great basketball player as well. And you mentioned the Red Kerr stuff, Adam, with here's Red Kerr, the first coach in Bulls history, the guy who played in Illinois, the guy who grew up here.
Yeah.
And he's the voice of Michael Jordan and yelling and screaming with Jim Durham and then with Neil. And Stacey takes over for him, starts filling in, as you mentioned. So he sort of has experienced what it's like to take over for a legend. And then you're doing the same when Neil Funk retires and you take over. Did you and him talk about that, helping you, who was you were already an accomplished broadcaster, but now you're coming onto the Bulls, and those two voices, Jim Durham and then Neil Funk, are Hall of Fame announcers. Did he talk to you about, filling the shoes of a legend?
I felt pressure right away, and because I grew up listening to Jim and Neil, and a lot of my basketball play-by-play, and I had been doing ESPN radio broadcasts on the NBA for a couple of seasons at that point. So I had some equity coming in. I had a little bit of knowledge and pedigree, and I understood. I'd called big games at that point, and I've done national TV at that point for 7 years. Like, there's no reason I should walk in, it's a local broadcast, whatever. This is my hometown team, and this is the guy that I grew up on, and the guy whose chair I'm sitting in is the guy that shaped a lot of my emotional connectivity. As much as I love Jim Durham, and I still to this day think Jim's the greatest radio basketball play-by-play guy in the history of the medium, Neil was the formative voice for me. So I felt that pressure right away, and Stacey alleviated that pressure the first day I met him. And it was October 22nd, 2018. It was my first time filling in. I was the first fill-in for Neil when he had announced that, hey, he's going to take road games off or take a chunk of the schedule off. And I was the first guy to step in. And as Stacey would joke around, the number always got a little bit bigger. Oh, it was 12 guys, and it was 15, then it was 19, then it was 34 people all had to audition for the job. And but I was the first one. And I got to the arena in Dallas early. I was coming from Oxford, Mississippi. I was doing a college football game the day before. So I was coming in, and I was in the arena, and Stacey and the team all walked in, and Stacey saw me and found me at the broadcast table and was like, "Are you Adam?" I was like, "Yeah, man, it's great to meet you. I'm a big fan." He goes, and he gave me a hug. He just gave me a hug right away. And immediately, like, whatever nerves I was automatically going to come in with kind of faded away. And like I told you guys, like, I didn't want to take away the thing that made him special, like, because I had watched him and I knew, and I'd worked with Dick Vitale at that point. I'd worked with him a couple of times. So it's like, I know what it's like to work with somebody that's a larger than life personality. I'm okay with taking a seat, but I wanted to fill in the right way. I still wanted to be me, and I didn't want to take away what made him special. He goes, just do your thing. Just do your thing. I'll figure it out. Just do what you do. And I'm sure he said that to all, dozen plus people that stepped. I'm sure he said the same thing to Benetti and to Lisa Byington and John Sadak and JB Long, and name a broadcaster that filled in. I'm sure he said that to everybody, but it made me feel better. It made me feel at ease. And after getting settled in, like, it was easy. It felt easy. And the way Stacey tells it, and this always was a point of pride of mine, and maybe it's an apocryphal story. He was known to have a couple in his back pocket, but he said he went to Bulls management after that first broadcast and said, that's the guy. And still auditioned with everybody and still worked with all the people. And they all did a great job. They're all incredibly talented people, as you all know. I'd rattled off some names that you're all fans of. But he said, that's the guy. And I basically was able to carve out a position here a couple years later when Neil fully retired because of him. He went to bat for me.
I keep going back to how damn talented he was. And I said to Sylvie earlier, and I'm not enunciating anything that we don't already know, but, to be as good as he was, part of it was that he could adjust to who was ever sitting in that seat. Now, you've sat in that seat for a while now, and you've adjusted to him, and that's why it works. But to be able to be him and be authentic and be, the talented broadcaster that he is, regardless of who's sitting in the chair next to him, is just it's such a gift and a talent.
That's conscientious. You have to be conscientious of that. You have to want to make the other person look good. I think that's part of the reason we connected right away, because I had deference for him, but he also respected me. And I think coming in with a little bit of the NBA pedigree, like I said, I'd called playoff games. I had done big games at that point. National TV for the NBA. It's like I had college football. I was doing the Bears at that point preseason. That was my first year doing the Bears preseason, which we talked about at that time. So like I think he saw me and was like, "Well, I respect you. Yeah. You know what you're doing. So let's just treat each other like we know what we're doing. We'll do exactly what we think we're supposed to, and I bet it'll work out." And it kind of just did. And that comes from being a conscientious teammate, and you have to want to make sure the person next to you looks good. My whole process, and I remember talking to Dan Schulman about this when I first worked with Dick Vitale, because obviously Dan and Dick had this great partnership on ESPN for years, and Dan, who's got the biggest, most booming, penetrative play-by-play voice, took a back seat to yelling, screaming Dick Vitale, because he's like, hey, that's who he is. I'm going to make sure that I don't need to be the star of the show, and you have to put your ego aside. And I wanted to conscientiously do that, not knowing and not realizing how reciprocative he would be, how much he wanted us to be good, and he cared so deeply about this. And he would go on to say, like, I thought I wanted to retire, and then like we found you, and I was like, let's keep going. This works. And that's him being an incredibly self-aware, and conscientious teammate to want people to shine next to him.
We had you on, I think, the day after this call, because the call was so spectacular. We were playing some of the Stacey's greatest hits throughout, like, and a lot of them obviously were during the Derek years. Sure. But I think, and Adam, like, I think the mark of great broadcasters, as a sports fan who's grown up in this city and has watched all of them, is the ones that entertain you even when the team isn't good. like I want to tune in because I got to see Stacey, I got to see Adam. They're going to deliver the goods. And for 2 hours that I spend with them, even if my team doesn't win, we're going to have fun. We're going to laugh. We're going to get informed. Like you said with Stacey, he was authentic. You can't pull that off if you're not authentic. And I want you to listen to this call, because I think it's so magical in so many ways, in the way you two riff together. Because one person says something and doesn't step on the other. And then you'll say something, he'll say something. And it's all in the chaos of the giddy game winner. Yeah. Against the Lakers. This isn't Derrick Rose advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals. This is regular season Bulls basketball. And we joked at the end.
This was your 33rd win of the season. This got you to 33 and 40.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's selling tickets. At the end of this clip, in true Stacey fashion, he's selling the tickets. Yeah. And you don't want to miss this. And it sums up, I think, your broadcast perfectly. It sums up who Stacey King was perfectly. And everything we loved about him. So I want to play it, and then you listen, you tell me what stands out to you.
Bulls are out of timeouts. 2 seconds left. Giddy for the win. Go!
My God! I cannot believe this. Elizabeth, I'm coming, baby. Oh, Lord.
Improbable.
Unbelievable.
Impossible.
Magic Giddy. Good day, mate. Somewhere in Australia, Sydney, or Melbourne, Paul Hogan is somewhere in Crocodile Dundee. Oh, Lord.
You may never see a wilder sequence than you just saw in the final 10 seconds. And Josh Giddey from down under beats the Lakers at the horn.
This is unbelievable. Bulls Nation, Embrace this team. I'm telling you, the hype is real. This is not the same team. You better embrace them. Get your tickets. Buy them. This is a special team. Lord Elizabeth. Watch Giddy. Half court. That's a shot for the ages. That will be replayed when we're all gone. What a shot to win a game from half court.
And it's weird to hear that,
that last part.
Last
That
part.
last
What
part
do you
hit me
think,
too.
Adam, when you hear that?
That's really him. There is no faking that. There is no faking the exuberance, the youthful vitality. Again, I joked with you guys, like he passed away at 59, which is a completely inefficient number for how long he should have been around based off of like the way he lived his life. He should have been around for way longer. But it's a wholly inaccurate number to try to encapsulate him, because he wasn't a guy in his late 50s. He was this kid, and that's an authentic, real reaction to one of the coolest things that we still, for the rest of my life, for the rest of our lives, we may never see something just that plays out just like that with those two teams and LeBron on the floor in Chicago, the hype around the game because of the buzz, and we may never experience anything like that. And I said that for a reason, and his reaction to it is so genuine and so very much him. And we went to our NBA broadcast seminar last year. That won our, like the league's call of the year, just our internal, like we have fun with it stuff. And I've had announcers, I've had other broadcasters come up to me, and perhaps of different generations or perhaps a little bit more traditionalist mentality, and nothing they're telling me is wrong. But a lot of them are like frustrated. They're like, doesn't it, you want to hit the call and get out of the way and let the crowd. And I come from that school. If you guys text me during baseball games where you're like, the atmosphere is incredible. You're laying out the whole time. You're like I like to lay out. The crowd to me is a tool that is a part of a television broadcast, unless you have something that supersedes the tool. And there's such a rare gem that we had sitting next to me as in Stacey that reacts to these things so genuinely and so in such a real manner that appeals to every fan that watches this, because that's how they were feeling.
Can you appreciate even your part in that? I don't know if you can because you did it, but I was telling the Waddle, I compared it to a symphony working together.
Yeah.
You say something. No one stepped on each other. You guys were going crazy.
Yeah.
But it was like you guys were finishing sentences from each other and doing it in the best possible way. It's such a great call.
That's the thing that I'll appreciate the most about him, is his ability to do that. And again, he's a one of one. So there's not many broadcasters I've ever had. Like I go to Adam Wainwright and AJ Pierzynski, and I always tell them like, hey man, big moment happens, home team, crowd goes nuts. I'm going to punch it, get out of the way. If you want to add something, go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. But more often than not, I'm just going to back off and let the crowd play it out. And because Stacey is who he is, and we wanted that genuine reaction out of him, I wanted to learn how do I do this so that I still punch the call. I don't want to not do my job and do it I still want to do it in the way that feels comfortable for me. But how do I do it so that he never feels like he has to hold himself back? And we realized fairly quickly that if I just read him a little bit and make sure I give him the proper space, but read him correctly, I'll be able to jump in when the moment is right. And I think we had a DeMar DeRozan, not the game winners. He hit a game-tying shot at the end of regulation to force overtime in Indianapolis. This was like a couple of years after he had hit the game winner there on New Year's Eve. And he hits the shot. It's like a mid-range shot, classic DeMar. And Stacey said, DeMarvelous DeRozan, as he always does. I didn't punch the call first. The ball, I go, here's DeRozan to tie it. It goes in. He punches the call, which is a non-traditional way to do this job. But he punches the call with the name. So I go, he says DeMarvelous DeRozan, and I pick it up and say, does it again in Indianapolis, and we're going to overtime. And then he picks it up. And it was a rhythm and a chemistry that is truly rare to find. You have to have the right people in position to do it. You have to put your egos to the side. You have to understand what everybody's strength is, and his strength is the genuine reaction. You cannot get that anywhere else. You can only get it from him. So I want tailor my call so that it fits what he does best and the thing that we love him for the most. And the thing I punctuated my piece in the Times with today was Stacey to me is a mockingbird. Harper Lee, one of my favorite books of all time is To Kill a Mockingbird. Harper Lee wrote this beautiful book, obviously, that many of us read growing up in school. And Atticus Finch says it's a sin to kill a mockingbird because all they do is go around and sing a song and make you happy, right? And all the things that he did, whether it was interacting with a fan, bringing them down on the floor, tweeting at them to make them feel like they were part of the conversation, shuttling unexpected fans onto the floor so they could take a photo, and give them a thrill of a lifetime, dapping them up like they were best friends instead of strangers that had just met minutes prior. Whether it was that, whether it was what he did on television, the joy he brought to people, the enthusiasm and the exuberance that made it fun, even when the team wasn't good, that's a mockingbird. That's what a mockingbird does. It sings its heart out so that you feel happy. There was no greater joy that Stacey had than to make other people feel good, whether it was in a conversation or whether it was doing the job that he was so good at doing. And for me, it would have been a sin to kill a mockingbird in the sense of silencing him, to tell him what I've told other young broadcasters, like, hey, big moment, crowd's going nuts, I'm going to back out. It's not how we're going to do it with me and him because he's established, he knows what he's doing, and he's so unique that I never wanted to take away the thing that gave him his superpower as a broadcaster. I never wanted to step on that. And that's the reason he and Neil were so good. Neil is a Hall of Fame broadcaster. He won an Emmy while Stacey was in college. So, and he knows the game. He played basketball. Like Neil was a star as a player, a star as a broadcaster, and became a Hall of Famer. And even he saw and heard and understood what Stacey was and said, I'm going to step aside. And I wanted to make sure that I followed that same suit, but I did it in my own way, in a way that made both of us connective. And I never wanted to commit the broadcast sin of silencing this bird that sang his song and made people happy.
The authenticity is unbelievable. That win against the Lakers got you guys to 7 games under 500. You can't fake that, Adam. No. You just can't.
That's true love right there.
That's what it is. Yeah. Do you have, I mean, I don't mean to trivialize it in any way, shape, or form, but you have a favorite Staceyism from the time working with him? Like one of his catchphrases that rang more loudly to you than others?
I mean, I always appreciated hot sauce. I think it's the original. I think it's the thing that separated him. He monetized it quite well with the actual hot sauce. So it always made me laugh. But it wasn't the catchphrases themselves. It wasn't the specificity of them. It was like how organic they were, how the nicknames they kind of came up. You know, he talked about his conversations with Jimmy Butler, and Jimmy Butler was like, hey, when do I get a nickname? He's like, you got to play first, bro. You got to get on the floor first. Yeah. And then when he started to get more time, like he implemented that little boozy
Gets buckets, right?
Jimmy G buckets. G is for gets. Like boozy vert is like an incredible turn of phrase. And again, I keep referencing this piece because it has so much of what I felt about him. That's what the play-by-play announcers used to. That's what Hawk did, right? Hawk gave the nicknames, and Hawk had the catchphrases, and that's been a tradition across baseball and basketball local broadcasts for generations. It was always the play-by-play guy. I have never been a catchphrase guy. It just wasn't my style coming up. So it was perfectly natural for me to be like, you do the whatever you want to say, I will support you. I'll supplement you. I always felt that was my job. Let me just compliment and supplement and support you in a rhythm and fashion that is entertaining and fun. And I think the rest of it's going to fall into place. And I think the organic nature of all of those things it just brings a smile to my
What do you think of this? So I want to play you what I think is the OG of the calls. Like you just mentioned the catchphrases and hot sauce and everything. This is a younger Adam Amin probably watching. Tell me where you were watching this. But I think that this was the call that started to define him as a young broadcaster, and then the Derrick Rose era. It goes to that road trip in Phoenix. And Dragic. Here it is.
Heinrich, good defense. Lead pass.
Stop it! Stop it! Do not do him like that! What are you doing, Dragic? Did you not get the memo? Derrick Rose can go upstairs.
He double clutch catches this. Watch this.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, he actually
What's
caught
this?
ball. Watch.
I want to go higher. Oh, my goodness. Dragic. Somebody grab Dragic and say, do you know who this kid is? He is from Chicago. He has a 40-inch vertical. And you are, where's my poster machine? This is what I need, my poster machine. Where's it at? Oh,
Crazy.
I'm fresh out of college. I'm in my first job in Spirit Lake, Iowa. Obviously, Sylvia, a place that means a lot to both of us, that area. And I am like, I find the game because they had it on a station in Iowa because the Bulls had a good reach. That to me, I've told this story from 2007 when Len Casper called Aramis Ramirez's walk-off home run against the Brewers during that incredibly fun summer where Milwaukee and Chicago were going back and forth for the division. And the walk-off goes, pitch to Aramis, deep fly, his voice cracks when he says, "Oh, baby." And that, I was like, that's when Len, a couple years into doing the job, I think it was his fourth season, became the voice of the Cubs to me as a Cub fan growing up. And that to me is when Stacey almost superseded everybody else and became the voice of like my teenage post-Jordan, the Reconstruction era fandom of this organization. And that's when I bet a lot of people were like, oh, that's the guy. Like, that's fun. I like when this guy yells stuff because Neil was so precise and polished and was a traditionally great play-by-play announcer. But Stacey just had this other thing, this other gear that I had never heard from another analyst, even Dick Vitale. I never heard that from somebody. And I thought, to me, that's when he became the voice of the Bulls. I think, Neil was the voice of the Bulls by title. I've succeeded him. So like the natural thought is, well, you're the voice of the Bulls. To me, Stacey has solidified and cemented himself as the voice of the Bulls. I will probably never respond positively to being called that again. Not because anybody is saying anything wrong or they mean anything by it. I think because, and especially after the other day, like to me, like Stacey is Chicago Bulls basketball in my ear and in my brain and in my head.
That's a great tribute from you, as the actual voice of the team. I know there will be time for this going forward to talk about the future, but these are literally huge shoes to fill, figuratively and literally.
Yeah. I will do everything in my power to make it as easy as possible for whoever comes in, whomever is fortunate enough to step in with this job. I've not thought about it at all, like just in terms of like who or what, and it's not up to me to decide. But whomever is slotted with this impossible task, I will make it very clear to anybody who watches, and I hate saying it this way, but I don't like getting into like deep truths right now, but this is an important one, I think, to establish now for the sake of other people. You will never hear, if you've watched Bulls basketball at any point for the last 2 decades, everything you got used to, everything that your brain has been conditioned to, this non-traditional broadcast. Again, the traditional has always been, I say who, what, you say how, why. Those lines very rarely ever blur. And we decided that's not how we're going to do this because Stacey is special. I have knowledge of the game, and you and I have a really great partnership that we can go back and forth and blur those lines. That's not going to be the starting point for whomever steps into this job. The starting point is going to have to be for their sake, for mine, and to ensure that we remember that Stacey was sui generis, one of one, a unicorn in this position. Nobody that has done this job in that position like him will probably ever be able to replicate that. For the next person's sake, for his sake, for my sake, for fans' sake, I want to establish right now you will never hear a Bulls broadcast that sounded anything like the last 2 decades for the rest of your life. You just won't. And I'm not trying to make it sound like that. It's going to be me doing my job to the best of my ability, the person whoever the Bulls hire, and I know they're going to make good hires because they think very deeply about this and they are very conscientious about how much Stacey meant to the game, to the show, the broadcast, the game in Chicago. Like, they're very conscientious about this, I know. So for everybody's sake, you will never hear a broadcast for the rest of your life the way you listened to it for the last 2 decades with Neil and Stacey and with me and Stacey. You will just never hear it again. You'll hear the best, most professional, most solid broadcast I and the other people and our production crew can possibly give you. And I promise if you give it a chance, you'll appreciate it for its own reasons. But I'm not naive enough to think that we're ever going to replicate what you've listened to for the last 2 decades. And I'm not even remotely stupid enough to think you're going to accept it if we tried to. Right. So the next iteration of this will be a lot of people who are smart, creative, and hardworking, doing the job to the best of their abilities with the sensibilities they have and the love of the city and the team that they have. And hopefully, at some point, you'll tune in and go, it's not what I remember, but it's good and it's fun and it's what I need to watch this team and enjoy it. And hopefully the team itself is good enough and entertaining enough to where, you know, we can still have a great time watching Bulls basketball. But I'm not stupid enough and naive enough to think that it's ever going to be the same again.